The little girl's voice cut through the noise of the garage like a blade. "If my dad fixes your Porsche," she said, planting both hands on her hips and staring straight up at the man in the three-piece suit, "you keep your promise. That's how it works." The man, Adrian Cole, CEO of Cole Meridian Enterprises, 41 years old, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million, looked down at the child and blinked. She couldn't have been older than 8. She had grease on her left cheek that matched the smear on her father's forearm, and her eyes were the kind of serious that made grown men shift their weight. He almost smiled, almost. "Deal," he said, the word dropping from his mouth like a coin into an empty tin. He had no idea what that word was going to cost him. Marcus Webb had been running Precision Auto on Garfield Street for 11 years. The shop wasn't fancy. The sign out front had a busted eye that nobody ever fixed, so it read PICSON Auto in faded red letters. The parking lot was cracked asphalt held together by weeds and habit. But every serious car person within 60 miles knew that if something was truly wrong with your vehicle, something the dealers scratched their heads at, something 3 other mechanics had already given up on, you brought it to Marcus. He didn't advertise, he didn't need to. The Tuesday afternoon, the Porsche 911 Turbo S rolled in on a flatbed because it couldn't be driven. Midnight blue, not a scratch on the exterior, the kind of car that cost more than most people's houses. It had been throwing codes for 3 weeks, misfiring at high RPM, and had already been through the Porsche dealership twice and a specialty import shop once. Total repair cost attempted, over $9,000, problem still unresolved. Marcus wiped his hands on a shop rag and walked a slow circle around the car before he even lifted the hood. His daughter Maya sat on her stool in the corner, the one she'd claimed as hers since she was 5, doing 3rd grade homework in a spiral notebook. She looked up when the flatbed arrived. She always looked up when something interesting arrived. Adrian Cole stepped out of the black SUV that followed the flatbed. He had the posture of a man who was never kept waiting and didn't plan to start. His assistant, a woman in a blazer with a tablet permanently attached to her hands, followed 3 steps behind. "You're Marcus Webb," Adrian said. "Not a question, really, more of a checkpoint." "I am," Marcus said. "I was told you're the best in the city." "I'm the best at finding what other people miss," Marcus said. "Whether that makes me the best, I'll leave up to you." Adrian Cole studied him for a moment. "The car's been to 3 other shops." "I know, I can tell by the connector housing on the secondary harness. Somebody already poked around in there and didn't like what they found." Marcus crouched beside the driver's side rear wheel well without being asked. "Give me a few days." "I need it in 4 days. I have an event in Monterey on Saturday." "I said a few days. We'll see what a few days means once I know what's actually wrong." Adrian Cole was not accustomed to being answered that way. His jaw set just slightly. His assistant made a note on her tablet. And that was when Maya climbed down from her stool, walked over in her little sneakers with the velcro straps, and stood in front of the CEO like she'd been doing it her whole life. "What's your name?" she asked. Adrian looked down. "Adrian." "My dad is going to fix your car, Adrian," she said, "but you told him you'd pay him what it's worth, not what the other shops charged, what it's worth. You remember that." The room went quiet. Marcus stood up slowly, half ready to redirect his daughter. Adrian Cole tilted his head. "I remember," he said. Maya nodded, satisfied. "Good." She turned and walked back to her stool. If you're new here, this is the kind of story we tell, real, raw, and full of moments that make you stop breathing. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you never miss one. Now let's get back to Marcus and what happened next. The problem took Marcus 16 hours across 2 days to isolate. It wasn't the fuel injectors, which is where the other shops had focused. It wasn't the ignition coils. It was a fault buried deep in the integrated chassis management system, a firmware conflict between an aftermarket performance tune someone had loaded 14 months ago and a factory update that had been pushed automatically through the dealer network. The 2 systems were fighting each other in silence, and under sustained high RPM, The car's brain was choosing the wrong protocol, pulling ignition timing at exactly the wrong moment, creating the misfire. It was, in the language of diagnostics, extraordinarily subtle. Marcus called two engineers he knew, one who worked in motorsport calibration in Germany, one who'd spent 8 years at Porsche's North American Technical Support Division. He spent an evening on the phone. He researched until 2 in the morning. He built a custom patch protocol using a specialized OBD interface he'd bought 3 years ago for a job that everyone told him wasn't worth the investment. Maya brought him coffee at midnight. She was supposed to be asleep. "You should be in bed," he said. "You should eat something," she said. She set the coffee down and a granola bar next to it, then went back inside without another word. He ate the granola bar. On Thursday afternoon, the 911 Turbo S started, idled smooth as a creek, and hit every RPM range without a single ghost of hesitation. Marcus drove it 12 miles on the highway, then 12 back. Clean. He ran the diagnostics 3 more times, every system reporting nominal. He called Adrian Cole's assistant. Adrian arrived Friday morning, 1 day before his Monterey event. He brought no entourage this time, just himself, in a lighter jacket, looking like a man who'd had a tense week and was preparing himself to be disappointed again. He wasn't disappointed. He sat in the driver's seat and ran through the gears in the parking lot, then pulled out onto the street and was gone for 20 minutes. When he came back, he sat in the car for a moment with the engine running, his hands resting on the wheel. Then he got out. "What did they all miss?" he asked. Marcus explained it, keeping it simple: the firmware conflict, the timing pull, the diagnostic approach. Adrian listened with the focused attention of someone who actually understood complexity. "3 shops," he said, 8 months, and you found it in 2 days. "Day and a half," Marcus said, "and I had help." Adrian looked around the shop. Maya was on her stool. She looked up, met his eyes, and looked back down at her notebook. "What do I owe you?" Adrian asked. Marcus handed him the invoice. Adrian looked at it. It was fair, more than the other shops had charged for the work they'd done wrong. But not unreasonable. It was the number of a man who knew exactly what his time and his skill were worth and wasn't going to perform humility about it. Adrian pulled out his phone and authorized the payment without flinching. Then he looked up. "You said you had help." "My daughter," Marcus said. "She brought me coffee at midnight when I was ready to quit." Something moved across Adrian Cole's face. Not pity, something quieter than that. He walked over to Maya's stool. She looked up from her notebook. The homework she was doing was math, multiplication tables, organized in neat rows in pencil. "You told me to keep my promise," he said. "You paid the right amount," she said, "so you did." Adrian nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a business card, not the standard one, the plain one he gave at events. This one had his direct number handwritten on the back. He set it on the workbench next to her. "Your dad is the best mechanic I've ever met," he said. "If he ever needs anything, you call that number." Maya looked at the card, then she looked at him. "He needs a contract," she said, "with your company's cars. He needs steady work, not just one car at a time. He's the best and nobody's figured that out yet, except the people who already come here." Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. Adrian Cole looked at the 8-year-old girl with the grease on her cheek and the notebook full of multiplication tables, and then he laughed. It wasn't a performative laugh. It was a real one, surprised out of him. "How old are you?" he said. 8.5, Maya said, "but that doesn't matter." Adrian picked the business card back up off the workbench. He held it for a moment. Then he put it back in his pocket and turned to Marcus. "I'll have my operations director call you Monday," he said. "Cole Meridian has a fleet of 12 vehicles. 3 of them are specialty imports. They've been serviced by a shop downtown that I've never been happy with." Marcus stared at him. "I make decisions fast when I know something's right," Adrian said. "I'm very rarely wrong." He glanced back at Maya. I'm also outclassed by 8-year-olds, apparently. Maya didn't smile. She just nodded like it was obvious. That was Friday. What happened over the next 8 days, Marcus would later describe as the kind of thing he'd stopped believing in somewhere around year 7 of running the shop alone, after his wife passed, after the bank had tightened his line of credit, after the neighborhood started changing and the big chain shop opened 3 blocks away. He'd stopped believing in the leap, the thing that takes you from where you are to somewhere that seems unreachable. He'd stopped believing in it, but Maya hadn't. Make sure you hit that like button before we go further. This story is about to take a turn that you are not going to see coming. Keep watching. Monday, as promised, the call came. Adrian Cole's operations director, a precise woman named Joel Hartman, called at 9:14 in the morning. She was organized, direct, and had already pulled the maintenance history on all 12 fleet vehicles. She knew exactly what questions to ask. By 10:30 that same morning, Marcus had agreed to a 6-month trial contract to serve as the primary maintenance and repair facility for Cole Meridian's vehicle fleet. The contract value, annualized, was more than twice what Marcus had made in any single year since opening the shop. He sat with it for a long time after the call ended. Just sat there at his workbench with the phone face down in front of him and the shop quiet around him and the hum of the ventilation fan the only sound. Maya was at school. He thought about calling someone, his brother in Houston, his friend David, who'd been his business partner in the early years before David moved away. He didn't call anyone, he just sat there. Then he got up and started prepping the bay for the first fleet vehicle, which was coming in Wednesday for a scheduled service. But that wasn't the turn. That wasn't the thing that undid Marcus Webb in the best possible way. The turn came on Thursday. A journalist called. Her name was Priya Menon, and she wrote a business column for a regional magazine that covered entrepreneurship and small business in the metro area. She'd gotten his name, she said, from Adrian Cole's communications team. Adrian had mentioned Marcus in an interview about vendor relationships and overlooked expertise in local economies. The quote was already out. He said, and I'm quoting directly, Priya told Marcus over the phone, "The best diagnostic mind I've encountered this year works out of a shop on Garfield Street with a busted sign. If you're serious about competence, stop paying for the logo and find the person who actually solves the problem." Marcus sat down. He said that. He did in a recorded interview that went up Tuesday morning. "Mr. Webb, the interview has been shared several thousand times. Your shop's name has been mentioned in the comments section of at least 4 automotive forums, and 2 business podcasts have already reached out to us trying to find your contact information." Marcus looked at the phone in his hand. 4 days after a little girl in velcro sneakers told a CEO to keep his promise. By Friday, Marcus had 11 new service inquiries in his inbox. 2 of them were from companies with vehicle fleets. One was from a collector in the suburbs who had a 1973 Ferrari dyno that had defeated 5 other mechanics. One was from a regional logistics company that ran a mixed fleet of 30 vehicles and wanted to discuss a long-term partnership. He called Maya's school and asked if she could be picked up 20 minutes early. When she climbed into the truck, she looked at him immediately. "What happened?" she said. "How do you know something happened?" "Because you look like you're about to cry, and you never cry," she said. "Not even when you burned your hand on the exhaust that one time." Marcus pulled out of the school lot and drove 2 blocks before he said anything. "You remember what you said to Adrian Cole about the contract?" "Yes." He called it in, and then he told a reporter about the shop, and now people are calling Maya, a lot of people. Maya was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I knew he would." "You knew?" "He kept his first promise," she said simply. "People who keep their first promise usually keep the rest." Marcus turned onto Garfield Street. The sign still said PICSON Auto. He pulled into the lot and sat there with the engine running. "We're going to have to fix the sign," he said. Maya looked at him like that was the least interesting part of everything he'd just said. Can I help paint it? She said. Yeah, he said. Yeah, you can help paint it. If this story moved you even a little, drop a comment below. Tell us what part hit you hardest, and subscribe if you're not already here. This channel exists for stories like this one. But the story doesn't end with the sign. The following Wednesday, Marcus received a personal email from Adrian Cole, not from the assistant, not from Joel in operations, from Adrian's own address, sent at 6:47 in the morning. It was short. It said, "My daughter is 13. She used to ride with me to the garage when she was Maya's age. She stopped being interested in anything I cared about around the time I stopped slowing down long enough to care about the things she cared about. I'm working on that. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Maybe because your kid reminded me what it looks like when a parent gets it right. A." Marcus read it twice. He typed back, "My wife died when Maya was 3. I've been trying to be enough ever since. Most days I don't know if I am, but she told me this week that she knew I could fix that car because she watched me fix everything. I didn't know she was watching. I thought I was just working." He sent it before he could edit it. Adrian replied within 10 minutes, "They're always watching." Marcus printed that email and taped it to the inside of his workbench cabinet, where only he could see it when the door was open. 3 words, "They're always watching." He thought about all the evenings Maya had sat on that stool, doing her homework, absorbing the shop, absorbing him, the persistence and the precision and the refusal to declare a problem unsolvable before the problem was actually understood. He thought about how she'd walked up to a billionaire without hesitation and spoken to him like he was just another person who needed to be reminded of something basic and important. She'd learned that in the garage. She'd learned it by watching him not quit. 8 days after a Tuesday afternoon, when a midnight blue Porsche came off a flatbed and a little girl said 4 sentences that changed everything, Marcus Webb's phone had more work in it than his shop had seen in 3 years combined. His 6-month trial contract with Cole Meridian was quietly expanded to a 12-month contract before the trial even properly began, because Joel Hartman had brought 2 of the fleet vehicles in for service and called it the cleanest diagnostic work this fleet has seen in 6 years. The Ferrari dyno collector came in on a Saturday and spent 4 hours in the shop just watching Marcus work, asking questions, taking notes on a legal pad. He was a retired engineer. They found the fault together, a carburation issue compounded by a cracked vacuum line hidden beneath the secondary intake. The man offered Marcus twice the quoted labor rate when it was done. Marcus charged him what was on the quote. "Why?" the man asked. "Because that's what it was worth," Marcus said. "Same reason going the other direction is wrong." The man nodded slowly. He'd be back with the car in 3 months. He'd also recommend Marcus to 4 other collectors he knew personally, 2 of whom owned cars worth more than the shop's building. But the thing that stayed with Marcus, the thing that he'd carry into every job after that, wasn't the contracts or the calls or the press quote or the clients. It was a Friday morning 2 weeks after all of it started. Maya came into the garage before school in her uniform, backpack on, and stopped beside the 911's empty bay. She stood there for a moment, and then she turned to Marcus. "Dad," she said. "Yeah. Am I going to learn to fix cars?" Marcus looked at her. "Do you want to?" She thought about it with the full gravity she brought to every question that actually mattered. "I want to learn how to find what other people miss," she said, "whatever that is." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, quiet and permanent. "Then yeah," he said, "you're going to learn." She nodded, she adjusted her backpack strap, and she went to school. Adrian Cole texted him that same afternoon a photo. It was him and his teenage daughter sitting in the front seat of the 911, parked somewhere with the ocean visible through the windshield. Both of them were looking at the camera. The daughter was almost smiling. Adrian's caption read, "Monterey, she asked to come, first time in 4 years." Marcus showed Maya the photo when she got home. She looked at it for a long time. "I'm glad he kept his promise," she said. She handed the phone back and went to her stool, where her homework was waiting, and the hum of the garage wrapped around both of them like it always had, like a language they'd been speaking their whole lives without needing to name it. Before you leave, subscribe to this channel, share this story with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and drop a like if Marcus and Maya found a place in you somewhere. We'll see you in the next one. The sign on Garfield Street was repainted the following Saturday. Maya held the brush for the eye. It said Precision Auto in clean red letters, and it was the best thing either of them had painted in their lives.